Welcome to TVJ's pre-debate discussion. I'm Emily Shields, and special welcome to those of you watching on TVJ's YouTube channel and the various social media platforms that are available. This evening, it's 6 days to go before election 2025. It's a highly anticipated leadership debate between Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, and Mark Golding, the leader of the opposition. It is a final of 3 debates. You've seen 2 so far. People have been trading score about who's won. And we look forward to seeing this evening who exactly it is who will claim the victory. So in the lead up to the debate this evening, we're going to have a look at what to expect, what do we want to see on the stage, some of the crucial issues that should arise, and you'll also hear our scorecard here this evening. Joining me in studio, therefore, Jermaine Barrett, founder and executive director of Jamaican Association for Debating and Empowerment. Good to have you, Mr. Barrett.
Good to be here.
Jodianne Quarry, attorney at law and broadcast journalist. She's host of Morning Agenda on Power 106. Welcome, Jodianne.
Hi.
Granville Knight, who is a social and political commentator. Good to have you, Mr. Knight.
Thank you.
And back on Zoom with us, we have political scientist Dr. Jermaine McAlpin. Welcome, Dr. McAlpin.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone.
Jermaine Barrett, let me begin with you. The stakes are high. Big debate. These 2 leaders have tried very hard not to meet. I think we last saw them at the Independence celebration. And they're meeting in a face-off that can have serious implications for what happens on the 3rd of September. What are you expecting?
Well, you've really highlighted an important thing to really examine, the extent to which they are able to deliver the speeches, the presentations, the responses in a cool, calm, determined and engaging fashion without losing their cool. I think I'm looking for a demonstration of head, heart and hands. They must demonstrate that they have the intellect, mental fortitude, they have the heart, they have the compassion, the sense of feeling for the plight and the challenges that confront Jamaicans at large. And they must have the hand, they must demonstrate that they have done work and are therefore deserving of people's confidence.
That's
for
fascinating. Head, heart and hands.
Absolutely.
And you want a cool demeanor?
Absolutely.
You don't want belligerence, you don't want over the top.
Not at all, not at all.
What?
Not at all.
That riles up the crowd.
If it is that they become sort of unhinged in this debate, it is demonstrative that as a prime minister they will become unhinged when the pressures start to hit them.
Jodianne Quarry, let me hear you, because somehow I think that this is what the 21st century is looking for. Not my style, but that's what they seem to want. What are you expecting?
I think that you're expecting to see 2 party leaders who see this debate as a way to speak to several sets of people. To speak to the party faithful, to rile them up, to give them quick quips, to have viral posts that come out of this debate that allow for persons to say, that is what my leader said, and that is who you should have as prime minister. You're looking at 2 leaders who need to use this platform the last few days before election to shore up the constituencies that might need a little push, to allow for those MP candidates who might not be going over the line, to have persons say, maybe I don't vote for the MP candidate, but I like that person there on the television. I want that person to be my prime minister. And then finally, you have to speak to Jamaicans who say, I need to understand the details of the plans. Tonight is not going to be a day where either leader can talk in grand terms without being really, really specific. And so today you're going to have to see people speaking to their manifestos, speaking to their plans, speaking to what they have achieved or what they plan to achieve, and to tell us how.
Granville Knight, what are you expecting?
Well, there are 2 things. There's what I expect, and then there's what I anticipate will happen tonight.
Love it.
What should be happening tonight is 2 things. One, the final nail in the coffin that has to say why you should vote for the JLP versus the PNP.
Yes.
But more important than that, tonight is a debate of the prime ministers. That's what it is. That's all tonight comes down to. Who is best to be prime minister? And when I've looked at the past debates, the winner of the debate tend to be the winning party. So we have heard the debates before, and there's been much to say as to who was the strongest debate team. It was Team PNP. Some say it was Team JLP. But when I look back at all the past prime ministerial debates, I found that the strongest speaker on the night, their party tend to win. Of course, we know that there are other factors, and we
have been one before
that,
the debate.
So what I expect tonight is for the prime minister, not
Andrew
Holness, or Mark Golding, or the Prime Minister in waiting. But we anticipate that the Prime Minister for the next 4 to 5 years will showcase themselves tonight. But what will they get? Well, we of course may get some of that, but we know that tonight will be a lot of politicking. We'll be talking about the manifestos, their final message to the nation as to why you should vote for me. But we want substance tonight, we want content, we want structure, and we want a message that it speaks to not just the political base, the simple knowledge. We want the facts, because there are persons who appreciate the economic facts that will be presented tonight. And of course, the simple knowledge also for the simpler folks.
Dr. McAlpin, what are you expecting?
I'm anticipating some kind of visionary statement, and like Granville said, for them to look at the big picture. But there are some unanswered questions. And I think the Prime Minister has more pressure on him than does the leader of the opposition. The burden of proof lies with him, especially with some unfinished business from the 2016 manifesto. I'm looking to hear more about why some of the past pledges were not fulfilled or achieved, and how and why should Jamaica give the Jamaica Labour Party another opportunity to continue along this trajectory without some of their major promises from the 2016 manifesto not fulfilled. And so it's really the question of who is a bigger visionary, who can cast a longer shadow in terms of what Jamaica needs now in terms of leadership. This is a leadership debate, so I don't anticipate that it should go down to the kind of, brass tacks kinds of debate in terms of the ad hominem attacks. I'm hoping it doesn't. I want substance over hype. And I know Jody said some quips, and that's great. But I really want to hear what are the plans should your party win and should you become the Prime Minister.
But have you been watching both of the leaders over the last couple of years? Jermaine Barrett, for example, Mark Golding is extremely talented on the parliamentary stage.
Absolutely. He
recalibrates for the political stage. Andrew Holness has come into his own, where he also makes good parliamentary presentations, and he's also making waves when he goes out politically. Judging from those two different personas that emerge, how do you expect that each of them will show up and face off this evening with all of the different expectations from people? Tell me how they decide what persona do I come to the stage with all of those different things coming together.
I think both of them will have to demonstrate a persona that is about the average of the two kinds of personas that you just described, because they're talking to an audience that is diverse. They're talking to the sort of grassroots Jamaican. They're talking to the intellectuals. They're talking about two persons of different class and within the various stratas of the society. And so I think you will see some dipping into some conversations that are real, that are almost guttural in nature. For example, I can think of the Prime Minister talking about that old lady with whom he interacted, who said, "Prime Minister, I'm tired to carry water up on my head top," right? Those kinds of narratives. I think Mark Golding will do a lot of the same as well, to make the kinds of big sort of macro indicators and that kind of a technical conversation seem real to people's lives.
Right.
You're going to get a lot of that.
Jodianne, as you practice in the court, you are, I'm sure, very familiar with previous inconsistent statements. And there have been so many previous inconsistent statements that have been made. To what extent are you looking for questions to come saying, you said this at one point in time, then you bob and weave and said this at another point in time? How much are you looking for that to decide on issues of credibility, if they come in at all for you in this debate?
I think it must come up. I think the two questioners we have tonight, Dionne Jackson Miller and Giovanni Dennis, are the kind of people who will dig to go find that you said this thing and now you have changed your mind. I think that is going to be important because we have some massive issues on the table. Foreign policy and what's going on in Venezuela and Cuba, the implications of things like that, what you said in the past, what it means now, things about here, local life in Jamaica, economy, what you thought was feasible about raising income tax thresholds, what was not feasible. You have to drill down, because those inconsistencies now allow me to see if I trust you.
Right.
And that trust factor will then play into what people consider to be this prime ministerial persona that you bring across. Are you the kind of person I can trust to squire the country into the next 5 years?
Yes, come on now, Mr. Knight, tell me how you expect the previous inconsistent statements to play.
Of course, that is a big part of politics. That's something I've seen. What you said then versus what you say now. We know for surety that what has been a part of the narrative for this election, especially on PNP side, is a matter of integrity. Can you be trusted? And when I look at, and once again, I'm looking back at all the prime ministerial elections, every now and again, the matter of integrity comes into play. What did you say? Can you be trusted? So that is going to be a very important part of tonight's debate, but then performance is going to be called into question as well.
When I come back, I'll deal some more with those, and we'll look at our debate scorecard. We'll tell you what we're looking for. Send your messages to hashtag TVJ Debates 2025. Let us know if you want us to add anything to the scorecard. We'll take your comments on air. This is a pre-debate analysis show. Stay with us. 10 minutes to go before the third and final debate for this debate season. Election comes up 3rd of September 2025. We're looking at things to expect. We'll tell you about our scorecard in just a moment. Back with Dionne Quarry, Jermaine Barrett, Granville Knight, and Dr. Jermaine McAlpin. Dr. McAlpin, before the break, previous inconsistent statements made by each of those to be on the debating stage tonight. How well do you expect those matters to play?
Well, they may trip up someone tonight, because you're going to now have to justify why you said it then and why you've changed. If you want to use the language of I've grown, then sure. But I think it's about the rhetorical arguments, what you can do to convince someone that you are to be trusted, even if you have vacillated in terms of what you've said in the past, you can be trusted. I think it's now the question of trust, and 6 days before the election, it's not promising, but it is posturing. I think that's where we are now. We've seen the manifestos and the supplementary manifesto. It's now about the posturing. Are you posturing to be prime minister? Do you look the part? This is now the grand stage. This is the playbill. The playbill is out, and tonight I think is a playbill, and who does it best will certainly come out victorious. And like Granville, I also agree that the stronger leadership debater tends to be the party that wins.
Right. We have the issue of the investigation concerning illicit enrichment that has hovered over this prime minister for a number of months now. Then we have the issue of the holding of a UK passport over Mark Golding. Questions as to where exactly was he born and whether he should disclose. Do they play at all tonight, Dionne Quarry?
I don't think so. I think those are pre-election discussions. I think if they have been ventilated before, this platform is not necessarily the best place to have it, except when it comes to the accountability question of Integrity Commission. I don't think on the basis of whether or not Mark Golding is qualified or disqualified from being a prime minister, it's too late in the game right now. But the question as to whether or not the Integrity Commission's investigation continues to play a part in how persons perceive Dr. Holness is going to be something that Mark Golding is likely to speak about tonight, especially as he tries to score political points.
So let me come to Jermaine Barrett. So the issue of UK passport, is that solely qualification, or does it come to integrity issue? And if so, does it play here at all for you?
I think it is an attempt to implicate both, but I agree with Jody. It will not matter. It will not shift the needle either way. I think the integrity issue is more relevant, and I expect that Mark Golding will press the integrity issue very forcefully. I think if the Prime Minister's response is to beat the drum beat about Mark Golding's citizenship and so forth, again, that is a losing cause.
Right. What about you, Mr. Knight? What do you think about those two issues?
The UK citizenship issue is not a factor, but I can tell you the matter of integrity will be. Looking back, once again, I'm going back in history, the 2011 debate between Simpson Miller and
Andrew Holness.
That's right. One of her winning points for that debate was the matter of corruption and integrity and what have you done about it, because you have done nothing. what will you do about it, since you have said about it? So we know that tonight, that is, I promise you, that must come up tonight in tonight's debate, because it's one of the major winning points that the opposition has right now against the leading party.
So, our leadership debate scorecard, this is what we've made up. We have columns of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. We have a question. For each question, we have a sheet of paper. In one column, we have content. In the other, we have structure of arguments. In the other, we have delivery, which includes tone, command of stage. And I think Jody recommended, does the person look or sound prime ministerial?
Do you have that leadership demeanor that allows us to say, this is the person that we can trust to squire now us into the next 5 years?
Right. And then we have the rebuttal, which will play a big role. How do you hit but recalibrate and get to the question? And then we have the total score and additional comments. So our aim, in fact, for all of the debates, what I do, I sit by myself in a room completely away from everybody. I don't want to hear a dog bark. I don't want to know what you think. I don't want to see social media. I do the assessment in a bubble. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Take our notes here and then score and then come back. Right? Yes. What about what they wear? Is that a big issue for you? Well, you wouldn't have an issue at all, Jermaine Barrett, with what they're wearing.
They're all in black. They're all in black.
They're all in black for you.
Absolutely.
Does it matter the color of the tie, Jody? What does it say to you?
It
the
does.
color that they choose?
These are two men who are going up there now. Is it a well-fitted suit? Are you looking like somebody who doesn't look rumpled? Are you looking like somebody who's rested? Are you looking like somebody who's prepared? Yeah. Part of that demeanor and that look and that willingness and ability to lead is how are you presenting yourself now to the nation as the person that is going to be our prime minister? It's these little things that matter and add to or take away from your credibility.
Yes, and as you say that, I mean, Granville Knight, the prime minister in particular, has been all over the country at all different hours of the morning. Do you expect him to come looking a bit tired, or will there be no excuse for however he looks? He needs to come to the stage looking fresh.
There is absolutely no excuse for tonight.
Yes.
He's prime minister. He has done this before. He knows this is what his third political debate at this level. So he should come prepared. He should know what is happening. But if he's tired, that's on him. Yeah. Tonight is about image, and tonight, whether or not you're tired, you must show up as the prime minister. What if you had an emergency meeting at this or the night from you're coming from overseas? You'd have to show up fully. So we're expecting that tonight.
Dr. McAlpin, just before we throw to the Debates Commission, talk to me about what they wear. Is that a big thing for you?
It's again performance and stagecraft. So I expect them to be in suits that are properly fitted. I also expect them to have the kind of posture that this is the person you want to be prime minister. So you have to look the part.
All right. Come back with us at 10:30 for the post-debate analysis. Here we head over to the Jamaica Debates Commission for the big face-off between Andrew Holness and Mark Golding. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Welcome to the final of 3 general election debates organized by the Jamaica Debates Commission, staged before a live studio audience. The debates are intended to assist in identifying, clarifying, and understanding the issues being presented in this general election campaign. This evening's debate focuses on the leaders. Members of the panel of questioners are Dionne Jackson Miller, Radio Jamaica 94 FM, and Giovanni Dennis, CVM TV. Taking and presenting questions from the public is our social media editor, Amoy Harriott, from CVM TV. I am your moderator, Archibald Gordon. As is customary, the audience is not to applaud the debaters except for now, after we announce each debater. Tonight, representing the People's National Party is party leader Mr. Mark Golding. Representing the Jamaica Labour Party is party leader Dr. Andrew Holness. The guidelines for tonight's debates have been previously agreed and are posted on the Debate Commission's website at www.jamaicadebatescommission.org. The guidelines include questions being no longer than 30 seconds, and each debater is allowed 90 seconds to respond to each question, and rebuttals are limited to 45 seconds. The questions posed in tonight's debate will come from two sources. The first source is you, the public. Send us your questions via direct message on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to Jamaica Debates. These will be checked, selected, and asked by our social media editor. The second source of questions is from our panel of journalists. Questions are not influenced by the Jamaica Debates Commission in any way. Our sign language interpreters tonight are Dorothy Williams and Terrian Bernard from the Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf. Based on a previous coin toss, our first question tonight comes from Dionne Jackson Miller of the RGR Group, and it will be directed to Dr. Andrew Holness.
Dr. Holness, government members have recommended taking the Auditor General off the Integrity Commission. There have been changes made by your administration to the Office of Political Ombudsman that have virtually destroyed its effectiveness as a check on the behavior of politicians. And there have been constant attacks by members of your administration on the Integrity Commission and on media and civil society groups that criticize your administration. Shouldn't Jamaicans be concerned about what appears to be a pattern by your administration of undermining oversight bodies in the public sector, civil society, and media?
There is absolutely no attempt by my administration and indeed myself to undermine any oversight body. Indeed, we have acted to strengthen and make them far more efficient. In placing the oversight of the political ombudsman under the office of the Electoral Commission, that's a move to strengthen and give it far more institutional framework. I myself have been very complimentary and acted in a very dignified way as it relates to the Integrity Commission.
Mr. Golding will have the opportunity to respond.
There has been a definite pattern of hostility from the Jamaica Labour Party government towards the institutions mentioned in the question, in particular the Integrity Commission, largely because it is well known that there are at least 10 members of Parliament who are under investigation for illicit enrichment, a serious corruption offence, of which the only one to be known is the one for whom a report has been completed and sent to the Parliament, which is you, Andrew. As a result of that, they have done their very best to try to neuter that critical institution, including the Prime Minister bringing that institution to court to undermine its effectiveness and indeed eliminate it entirely.
Our next question comes from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Mr. Mark Golding.
Mr. Golding, Keith Duncan says the PNP's proposal to increase the income tax threshold to 3.5 million is impractical and impossible to fund without new taxes. Can you explain how these planned tax breaks will work without hurting the economy?
The context in which we have decided to increase the threshold to 3.5 million is the hollowing out of the middle class in this country. Working families finding it extremely difficult to make ends meet. And we believe with the debt to GDP ratio having now, after 13.5 years of belt tightening and austerity, having now reached the cusp of the target of 60% of GDP introduced into the fiscal rules in law under Portia Simpson Miller, this is a time, this year it's expected to actually, with the readjustment of the definition and calculation of GDP, this is the year that we expect to achieve that target. That will release 2.5% to 3% of GDP of additional resources, which were not previously budgeted for in the fiscal policy paper. That is more than sufficient to pay for our entire program, including the $3.5 million increase to 3.5 million of the tax threshold, which will make our civil servants and our middle managers, and indeed most of Jamaicans who are presently suffering under the high burden of the cost of living, have money that they can spend, they can fix up their homes, extend their homes with a room, buy a car if they don't have one, pay down debt where they may be in arrears. It is necessary to preserve the country from brain drain and to keep the society intact.
Dr. Holness now has the opportunity to respond.
The hollowing out of the middle class is an act of the PNP. They totally decimated the middle class. It is a Jamaica Labour Party that introduced the increase in the non-tax threshold that recreated a middle class in Jamaica. In fact, when you look at the salary profile of PAYE contributors, you would see that their salaries have all risen. It is a Jamaica Labour Party through the compensation review that has increased salaries by over 200 billion Jamaican dollars for public sector workers. The current proposal of the PNP is unworkable. With an expert forensic auditor, the findings of that report have suggested no corruption. There have been no charges. Every aspect of my report, every aspect of my personal life and my personal financial details are in the public domain. I am the politician about which Jamaica knows the most. And therefore, I am the politician who can stand with the greatest moral authority to treat with any matter that is considered corrupt, as I have done in the past. And I want to give this assurance to the Jamaican people that you know me, you know about me, you can trust me, and you know that I stand against corruption.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond to that social media question as well.
Andrew, what they know about you is that you have 28 bank accounts, that you received several $1 million in cash deposits from anonymous donors in your bank account, that your companies had transactions of over $400 million, several thousand transactions between them, and that Positive Jamaica Foundation, a non-profit which you are intimately connected with, provided resources which you use for personal investments through your personal company. We have signed the Leadership Code of Conduct developed by Integrity Commission. All of our spokespersons and myself have signed. None of your people have signed it. I am committed to ensuring that all members of the executive, when we form government, will have their Integrity Commission declarations published, not just the leader of the opposition and what should happen, but hasn't happened in your case because you're not certified, the Prime Minister. So the whole question that has been asked is an excellent question. And we really need to step up our vigilance against corrupt behaviour, nepotism and cronyism. The volume of scandals under this Jamaica Labour Party government is unprecedented. Over the number of ministers who have had to be removed from frontline duty, many of them parked in the naughty corner in OPM rather than being sacked. It is a disgrace to the country, and your personal situation where you're operating under a deep cloud because your Integrity Commission declarations are not certified, also is something which Jamaica cannot go forward with.
We'll now take a short break and we invite you to stay tuned. Welcome back to the Leaders' Debate presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission. We invite you, the public, to send us your questions via direct message on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok to Jamaica Debates. We now ask Dionne Jackson Miller to start this segment with a question for Mr. Mark Golding.
Going back to the income tax proposal, Mr. Golding, because several people have been taking issue with your numbers. The PNP's assertion that it can fund the proposal through projected revenue growth doesn't seem to take into, as well as organic revenue growth, doesn't seem to take into account increase in expenditure that's also projected, as well as low growth rates that no government in recent years has managed to overcome. Isn't it true that your numbers just don't add up?
The fiscal policy paper does project over the next 3 years some $160 billion of additional revenue. The degree to which there are accompanying expenses will depend on how we manage the expense side of the budget. There's also the fact that there are $360 billion of programs in the budget represent the priorities of a given government at a particular point in time. When we are elected, we're not going to be elected to maintain the current trajectory that Jamaica is on. People want to see change. And most fundamentally, the issue really is the fact that we are coming to the end of the period of austerity, the period where Jamaica has been for 13 and a half years, steadfastly paying down debt. So that the debt to GDP ratio, which we inherited at 147% of GDP at the beginning of 2012, is now, in this fiscal year, projected to achieve the target of 60% of GDP. Once that happens, we no longer have to reduce debt as a priority. We just have to maintain that debt profile. That will release resources of 2.5% to 3% of GDP, which is close to $90 billion of additional resources which no longer have to be part of your primary surplus target. So we will be able to fund our program quite comfortably come April next year when the fiscal year starts.
Dr. Holness,
there is a song which says, when the rum tells you you're a big dancer. I don't know what the leader of the opposition was drinking. Firstly, the debt to GDP for this fiscal year is not projected to be 60%. It is projected to be 65% thereabouts. If the leader of the opposition is depending on growth to provide the revenues for $75 billion of expenditure, the country would have to grow between 8 and 10%, which has not done that since the 60s. Thirdly, yes, there are $300 billion of programs. What are these programs? Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
Dr. Holness, you said on February 7, 2016 in Sam Sharp Square, Montego Bay, within our first 100 days in government, we will start the legislative process to fix the general election date in Jamaica. It's been 3,490 days since. In your May 2016 budget debate, you further stated the country should not be distracted by protracted periods of uncertainty. Yet, that's exactly what happened with this year's election. After 2 consecutive terms in office, you have failed to deliver on this promise. Why?
Your research into this matter, and I respect the question, is incomplete. At the calling of the 2020 general elections, I explained to the public in Parliament that our government actually started work on fixed election date, and we found that it was inconsistent with our constitutional arrangements. And therefore, we did not include it in our 2020 manifesto. It is no longer a part of our platform. More to that, however, is the fact that in seeking to have all of these previous considerations included, we went about putting in place a constitutional reform commission that would bring all the considerations for constitutional reform under an expert review. That expert review was thwarted by the opposition. So, yes, these considerations were considered from 2016, but the reality of our constitutional arrangement made us take a different route, which is to go to a comprehensive constitutional reform, which was frustrated by the opposition.
Over to Mr. Golding to respond.
Just before I respond, just to point out that Mr. Holness's data is not current. The Fiscal Commissioner issued a release, I think it was today actually, indicating that with the National System of Accounts being updated, GDP has been adjusted, and we're now at 62% of GDP. That's what the debt is at the end of March this year, and we will more than likely achieve 60% this fiscal year. No, please, you're not entitled to do that. The flip-flopping from the Prime Minister is manifest. They were supposed to have impeachment. There's no impeachment. Fixed election day, no fixed election day. Ring fencing the NHT, they have taken over $130 billion out of the NHT. Cannot be trusted.
Just reminding that there is a format to the debate and asking the debaters to respect the format to which they have agreed. It's now time to go to the next question. Social media. Amoy Harriet, over to you.
This question comes from Janine. Parliament has passed a constitutional amendment bill and a referendum bill to transition Jamaica into a republic. Could you clarify the economic and administrative implications of this transition and how you intend to ensure that the process doesn't distract from Jamaica's economic priorities like debt reduction, investment diversification, and public services?
That question goes to Mr. Golding first and then to Dr. Holness.
In answer to the question, we can whistle and ride. So we have done very well as a nation in reducing our public debt. We ensured that the fiscal rules were very strong with an algorithm, an equation in the fifth schedule to the Financial Administration Audit Act that determines the fiscal balance that must be hit by each year's budget, and that has ensured that successive governments have stayed on course to take it down to 60%. We can do constitutional reform. Critical issues, and we have achieved that consensus yet on the critical issue of decolonization, in particular our final court, which is now the Privy Council, the King's Court, that makes orders in the name of the King, as opposed to the regional court, which has been established, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which Jamaica helped to design, helped to fund, and which has developed over the last 20 years a reputation for independence and excellence. There are aspects of the bills that are in Parliament now that we have big problems with. In particular, the fact that effectively it will allow the Prime Minister to appoint the President, because a simple majority of both houses will do it if we do not agree who that person is. I think that is wrong. I think that the President of the country must command the trust and confidence of both sides of the political aisle and indeed the wider public.
Dr. Holness?
To be clear, the bills before Parliament do not give the Prime Minister the ability to appoint the President. We are the party that have advanced the greatest, the process of repatriating our sovereignty. I am a Jamaican through and through, and I want to see my country's sovereignty represented by a Jamaican. It puzzles me as to why the opposition is trying to frustrate this. The opposition says we must always consult the people, yet they do not want to consult the people on a fundamental architecture of our society, our final court of appeal. They are inconsistent, they are hypocritical, flip-floppers. They were the ones who nudged, encouraged, and agreed with the government that a process should be started for the repatriation of our sovereignty. Midway the process, they have turned around to say they have challenges with it. What is it that they really want? Are you truly a Jamaican?
It's time for our next question. It is from Dionne Jackson Miller, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, the PNP is promising a tax break for small businesses for the first 3 years of formally incorporating, as well as a raft of other targeted tax relief measures. How do you respond to criticisms that your tax plan reintroduces inefficiencies, tax avoidance, and corruption into the tax system that have been eliminated over the past 15 years?
First of all, I think the Prime Minister repeated innuendo or direct attack which has been leveled by his party on my nationality. And, you know, I just wanted to just make it absolutely clear that I am indeed born here as a Jamaican. Here is my birth certificate, and it shows I was born at the University Hospital on July 19th, 1965, and it's right here. I hope your camera can pick it up. And I have a copy for you, Prime Minister, right here. And I wish you could provide me with a copy of your certification, but of course you can't do so. Now, on the question of tax, there's a third schedule to the GCT Act now, which has a long list of items which are not subject to GCT that are exempt. We feel that laptops and other devices are critical tools of trade, and it is wrong to tax them, and we are going to add them to that list. And similarly, sports equipment, which is vital for social cohesion. Sports is a critical part of keeping young people away from straying down the wrong path and so on. Why are we taxing those items? The cost of living is already high. So I don't agree. The system we have already caters for items which should not be taxed. And we're simply saying we want to adjust those items to include things that should be there but are not yet there.
Dr. Holness?
The Jamaica Labour Party is the only political organization to have reduced taxes. We reduced the GCT from 16.5% to 15%. And we have done so in a way that has not compromised our revenues or the sustainability of future programs. All, and I repeat, all the tax suggestions and promises of the opposition will compromise our fiscal arrangements and place us back in debt or result in increased taxes. The best way to provide social services is to identify the persons who need it.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
The Rio Cobre is a major water source for the St. Catherine Plains and communities in and around Spanish Town. Yet, since 2019, under your Water's Environment Minister, there have been close to a dozen chemical spills, causing fish kills and disrupting lives. You say you're a champion of the environment. Why hasn't there been tougher sanctions for the repeated breaches of environmental permits by the companies culpable?
The Jamaica Labour Party has put in very tough sanctions, including the requirement for the provision of bonds. We are the only government to have called these bonds and brought polluters to court. We have also started the process of studying the Rio Cobre to ensure that there is no discharge into the Rio Cobre. And this is something that I am personally very serious about, and we will put in legislation to end discharge into the Rio Cobre. It becomes even more important as we have now put in place the Content Rio Cobre water project, for which we are pulling 15 million gallons of water from the Rio Cobre per day. So we must protect that asset, and I give the public my sincere commitment that we will protect the Rio Cobre.
Mr. Golding?
Quickly, just to say that the JLP is not the only party to have reduced taxes. The PNP reduced the personal income tax rate from 33.3% to 25%. We reduced the GCT rate from 17.5% to 16%. There's been reductions of taxes on both sides. They plan to reduce, they say, income tax from 25 to 15, which is going to help the rich and the ministers who pay themselves 200+% pay increases. On the environmental issue, you are the one who overturned NEPA's decision not to grant a permit for the mining of the Dry Harbour Mountains, which is a very sensitive nature reserve. You're flip-flopping again, Andrew.
Our next question is from social media. Over to Amoy Harriot.
Well, Archie, Delano says many Jamaicans would like to see the full rollout of body-worn cameras on our police officers, even more so now given the increase in fatal police shootings. Will this be something that you'll prioritize should you be elected?
Mr. Golding will respond first.
First of all, I think it's very important to acknowledge and commend the excellent work done by the police force over the last year and a half in bringing the rate of violent crime, in particular murders in the country, down from the intolerable levels where it had been under this government. More murders committed in Andrew Holness's 2 years in office than any other 2-year term in the history of Jamaica. The police have finally abandoned the failed policies that we did our best to stop, the mass use of states of emergency, which the court has ruled as unconstitutional, and have gone now to a much more targeted approach, a much more strategically sound approach. Having said that, we do feel that it's very important that the public as a whole must have trust and confidence in the police, because the police rely on intelligence and information from the public. And therefore, if the public feel that there's excessive use of force and there's no accountability for it, they're not going to be as cooperative as we need them to be. I think, therefore, it's in the interests of the Jamaican society and the police themselves to have the benefit of body-worn cameras, especially when they go on special operations, so there can be no question, nobody can accuse them wrongly of having used excessive force when the force was legitimate as used. And to the extent that there may occasionally be an excessive use of force, the persons are held accountable for that in accordance with the law. That's what the rule of law requires.
Dr. Holness?
The government is already in the process of procuring and acquiring body-worn cameras. Several thousands of them are under procurement and will be deployed shortly to the police force. We consider this as absolutely important in giving confidence to the public regarding the actions of the police force. And the police themselves want to have these cameras as protection for themselves. Interestingly, however, the leader of the opposition states that the states of public emergency did not work. Now, murders under the PNP increased to over 1,000 murders in 1997 and remained there for over 30 years. It is the Jamaica Labour Party in 3 consecutive years that have reduced murders by 55%. The states of public emergency worked. The states of public emergency were supported by the PNP when Peter Phillips was the leader of the opposition, and it reduced murders by 27%. Since we did not have the cooperation of the opposition, murders went up. A question must be asked: who is responsible for the increase in murders when there was a tool that could have saved lives? It is a serious question.
Now, Giovanni Dennis has indicated that he would like to ask one of his 2 follow-up questions. I believe that question will go to
Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, I want to go back to the matter of your dual citizenship. It took days for you to confirm that you held dual citizenship and weeks for you to renounce it. Why didn't you acknowledge the issue up front, and why should Jamaicans believe you will be forthcoming with them on any issue, even if it's uncomfortable in the first instance?
I didn't hesitate to acknowledge dual citizenship. I was born in Jamaica. I had a British father, and I inherited British citizenship by descent from him. And that's lawful under the laws of Jamaica, and indeed parliamentarians in Jamaica are permitted to be dual nationals. I therefore didn't consider it to be something which was problematic. However, when it was raised last year and politicized, I decided I want to know what the Jamaican people felt about it, because I thought really my response ought to be driven by them. We did an internal poll. It showed that a majority thought I should renounce, and so I did. And I renounced my British citizenship in August last year.
Dr. Holness, rebuttal.
You know, this is a strange one. A man who wants to represent his country must choose his country. He doesn't need to ask anyone. He should choose. And that's why we say we choose Jamaica. It is indeed of concern that it was not until your 40s, when you were becoming a minister of government, that you sought to have a Jamaican passport. It is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. It is the choices you make for your country, including supporting a process that would make a Jamaican head of state here, including getting a Jamaican passport.
Our next question is from social media. Over to Amoy, and that question will go to Mr. Golding.
On TikTok, Taj says, given the current negotiations surrounding the U.S. Keep Call Centers in America Act and its potential to impact over 50,000 Jamaican BPO workers, how does your administration plan to safeguard both employment and livelihoods for young Jamaicans if outsourcing opportunities decline?
That's a good question, and the truth is that the evolution of technology especially the advent of artificial intelligence, is also a threat to the type of services that are provided through outsourcing. So we are going to have to ensure that we try and upskill our existing workforce so that they can be trained to do the type of tasks that technology isn't going to be as adept at dealing with as human beings. And we also have to provide other avenues for employment for young people. That's why we're going to establish the Youth Innovation Fund, which will provide grants and loans to young people to get them into business if they want to get into business. And it will enable them to pursue their talents in tech or in creative industries or any other area of endeavor so that they can express themselves, help to monetize their talent and build brand Jamaica. And so those are the types of things that need to be done. We also want to emphasize training and the role of the private sector in training. We'll be giving an incentive, a dollar-for-dollar matching of all businesses who invest in upskilling and training. We will match their investment through the HEART program to encourage them to invest further in training and upskilling the workforce so they can employ more people in higher paying jobs. Right now, too many of our people are struggling in low-income jobs, low-wage jobs, low-tech jobs.
The same question goes to Dr. Holness.
Well, let me give you some practical and real answers instead of airy-fairy stuff. Jamaica is already positioning itself for nearshoring and friendly shoring of the recalibration of the global supply chain. And that is why we have made a massive investment in the Caymana's development and in Raintree. These are real investments that will bring production to Jamaica and jobs to Jamaica. We have already started to ensure that over 120,000 Jamaican youths can access training free of cost under HEART. And much of that training is in support of not just BPO, but logistics. But more than that, we saw the change in technology coming and the impact it would have. And that is why we have invested in a coding and technology academy, the Amber Heart Academy, where hundreds of Jamaican youth are trained in not just the basics, but as high up as data science. Because what we want to create in our society are the trained skills that can attract the jobs that we are already negotiating for. You have a government that understands the changing global dynamics.
Thank you, Dr.
and putting
Holness.
in place measures to take advantage of it.
Welcome back to the Leaders' Debate presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission. We invite you, the public, again, to send us your questions via direct message on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to Jamaica Debates. We now ask Dionne Jackson Miller to start this segment with a question for Dr. Andrew Holness.
2021, you were appointed to the Queen's Privy Council, an ancient advisory body, and your administration's recent attempt at constitutional reform would have seen the removal of the British monarch from Jamaica's parliament and executive in phase 1, but not from our judiciary. Opposition or no opposition, referendum or not, can you tell us your position, whether you support the removal of the Privy Council as Jamaica's final court, and if so, when?
My position is that Jamaica should have its own local court as its final appellate court. But I also do respect the Caribbean Court of Justice, of which we are a part of its original jurisdiction. I will say, however, that on a matter as important as this, that forms the architecture of our nation, the people must be consulted. And that is why I put in place a process that would begin these consultations in a practical and phased basis, a process which has been thwarted by the opposition. Now, the leader of the opposition raises questions about democracy. On one hand, he does not want to consult. He wants the government to just act without consulting with the people, but then turns around and says that we are the ones undermining democracy. The leader of the opposition must be consistent. Democracy requires us to consult the people on these critical matters.
Mr. Golding?
Yes, Mr. Holness, shortly before the visit of Prince William to Jamaica, became a member of the King's Privy Council. So one has to wonder how he was choosing Jamaica when he did that. Anyway, to answer the question, we want to follow the Constitution, and the Constitution has been ruled by the Privy Council as the highest court as not requiring a referendum for the decision as to whether or not the CCJ should become the final court replacing the Privy Council. And that is what we think ought to be done. No other country that has moved away from the Privy Council has had a referendum to do so, and there are good reasons for that.
Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, the PNP under your leadership has flip-flopped on a number of issues. For example, Julian Robinson on May 16, 2023 said the opposition takes no issue with the massive salary increase for parliamentarians. The very next day, the PNP released a statement objecting to the increase. Why should Jamaicans trust that you won't similarly make about turns on promises you are making now?
When Julian said that in Parliament, he was referring to the principle of parliamentarians getting an increase. He wasn't addressing the specifics of what was being proposed. We hadn't had a discussion around those specifics. When we looked at the details and we saw the massive increase that the Prime Minister was proposing for himself and for his ministers, we felt it was unconscionable to do that in the context where the public sector workers had just had their salary negotiations under some duress in relation to the teachers in particular, finalized, and many of them were getting 20% over 2 years. That is why we had to clarify our position, because it was not in accordance with what we thought that principle demanded. Now, over time, thinking can evolve. People change their positions on issues. So, for example, we are looking at this whole question of the 3.5 salary, the $3.5 million threshold increase. And we've seen where, as the debt target is achieved and resources can be released, it can be afforded. We weren't calling for 3.5 2 years ago, but we see that the need, inflation, etc., have happened. Cost of living pressures are there. Our evolution, our thinking has evolved, and we think that this is the right thing to do now, and we're committing ourselves to it. So, you know, I don't think the criticism is justified.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Dr. Holness now has...
I have to call out that the leader of the opposition is telling lies. Julian Robinson stood in Parliament and said he supported the increase. Clear, and the tapes are there. Secondly, he calls the increase unconscionable, yet he takes it. I, Andrew Michael Holness, did not take it. The option was available to him as well. I chose not to take it. The leader of the opposition says, I have 28 bank accounts. That is absolutely not true. The report of the Integrity Commission includes accounts that are closed, accounts that are dormant, insurance accounts, and investment accounts.
Thank you.
They have weaponized it.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is from Dionne Jackson Miller, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
Dr. Holness, in your 2016 manifesto, you said, quote, will make it mandatory that the appointment to sensitive posts be approved by a 2/3 majority in each House of Parliament, thereby requiring consensus between government and opposition. Now, the posts identified included the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. Not only did you not implement this, but you disregarded the opposition's objections in the case of the recent extension, which led to a court case. Wasn't this a betrayal of the principle of bipartisanship that you had been proposing 9 years before?
Absolutely not. And indeed, in some instances, there are parliamentary review of sensitive positions. And I want to be also very clear that the constitutional reform process that we have put in place would take into consideration all of these proposals that were made. We cannot tinker with the Constitution, doing a little thing here and a little thing there, and therefore we decided to put it in a comprehensive process, again, which the opposition has thwarted. But since I have some time, let me also address some other issues about the leader of the opposition. In my own Integrity Commission report published in Parliament, there were no findings of corruption. All my assets are in Jamaica, and I have declared everything to the Integrity Commission. The leader of the opposition, however, also had a report from the Contractor General previously, which found that they benefited from public resources in an irregular way. They termed it a sweetheart deal. In my report, there is no such thing. None of my resources are ever connected to any public funds or any public resources. However, for the leader of the opposition, the report was very clear that their operations were considered to be irregular and a sweetheart
Thank you,
deal.
Dr. Holness. Mr. Golding has an opportunity to respond.
The Prime Minister has no interest in bipartisanship. He has strong dictatorial tendencies and really would prefer not to consult with the opposition at all if he didn't have to. And I say that based on my experience with him over the last 5 years. He talks about he didn't want to tinker with the Constitution. Then why did he seek to amend the Constitution as a one-off, tabling the bill and seeking to pass it on the same day to extend the DPP's tenure beyond what was constitutionally allowed? That was tinkering, Prime Minister, so come on. And in terms of Integrity Commission reports, my declarations have been certified every year as being proper. Yours have not, because you are under investigation for illicit enrichment.
Mr. Golding. Our follow-up question now, Dionne Jackson Miller has indicated she'd like to use the first of her follow-up questions.
On the same issue of the DPP's appointment, Principal Dr. Holness doesn't require constitutional amendments, though. And if it is that you were committed to the principle of bipartisanship, why would you have rejected such strongly worded opposition coming from the opposition leader?
End of the day, this matter was taken to the court, and the courts decided, and the DPP was reinstated. I want to also clarify something that the leader of the opposition said. The investigations carried out by the Integrity Commission are at an end. I am not currently under any investigation. There were no findings of corruption or charges. The leader of the opposition continues to try to weaponize these things because that is the only crutch he has to stand on. I, Andrew Holness, am thoroughly transparent.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
Thank you, Dr. Holness.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Again, Andrew Holness is being disingenuous and tricky. The Integrity Commission referred his matters to the Financial Investigations Division, a law enforcement agency charged with investigating serious financial crimes, for further investigation. What was his response? When there was a vacancy at the head of it, he sought to appoint or influence the appointment of somebody who is his close personal friend and who had said publicly on nationwide radio that he didn't see anything wrong in the report on Mr. Holness's financial situation, the Integrity Commission's report. It was clearly a set-up job, and we feel that very strongly that this needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Our next question is from social media. I'm going to hand over to Amoy.
Malik on Facebook says, many Jamaicans feel the economic growth that's been reported hasn't lowered their grocery bills or electricity costs. How do you measure economic success beyond the statistics?
Dr. Holness has the opportunity to respond first.
The first measure is income. And 280,000 jobs have been created in Jamaica, which means that more Jamaicans have income. There is a rise in income. Let's look at the minimum wage. The Jamaica Labour Party government has tripled the minimum wage. So there are more Jamaicans earning more at the lower levels of our country. Further, access to basic amenities. 350,000 Jamaicans have access to potable water. And in our next term, we will ensure that the 900,000 Jamaicans which now don't have reliable or full access to water will have access to water. Transportation, public transportation. We have done an amazing job in reducing bus fares and increasing the convenience and efficiency of public transportation, including implementing a rural bus fare system. On electricity, we have reduced the GCT on electricity, a promise made by the previous government and not kept. We have done it in a sustainable way. But more importantly, we have not placed any new taxes on the people of Jamaica since our government has been managing the fiscal affairs of this country.
Mr. Golding has an opportunity to respond.
First of all, I think the question is sound because statistics don't tell the full picture. Jamaica's competitiveness has been falling, yet they say that we have record low unemployment. Several 100,000 Jamaicans are outside the labour force and are not measured for that purpose. And indeed, you're regarded as being employed if you're employed 1 hour a week. 55% of Jamaicans are suffering from food insecurity. That is what the United Nations says, the FAO, which is an agency of the UN, says. 55% of Jamaicans are not getting adequate nutrition. That is not consistent with prosperity or low poverty rates or low unemployment rates. As for transportation costs, those are extremely high for many Jamaicans, which is why we want to introduce the RIDE program, a subsidy for rural children to help them to get to school in an affordable way. It's $10,000 per child who needs it in each family. So if you have more than one child, each one of them would qualify for this, because we recognize that that is one of the causes of absenteeism in schools at the moment. As for electricity, the rate and cost of electricity under this government has gone way higher than where we left it at 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's over 40. And as for the GCT, they are providing a subsidy at the moment, but they haven't said for how long, and there's no commitment to keep it on.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Welcome back to the final segment of the Leaders' Debate presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission. We invite you, the public, to send us your questions via direct message on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to Jamaica Debates. Now, this segment actually begins with a follow-up question. Giovanni Dennis has indicated that he'd like to ask one of his follow-up questions, and that goes to Dr. Andrew Holness.
Dr. Holness, on the matter of your government's hostility towards accountability institutions, in a world where journalists reporting on the conflict in Gaza are being murdered, the constant attacks on the press in Jamaica by both political parties undermine press freedom and has been reflected in Jamaica's slippage on the World Press Freedom Index. We have just seen the release of the names of journalists that both political parties objected to participating in the national debates. Why do both parties continue to undermine press freedom and put journalists in danger?
To be clear, my political party does not undermine press freedom. To be clear, my political party did not object. The objections came from the PNP. And historically, it is the PNP that has been vociferous, including attacking a particular radio station. I personally have stayed away from any negative commentary about any journalists. Journalists are important, and I support strong journalism. And I want to make that absolutely clear. In the time I have, I will rebut. I am in no way associated with the head of the FID. My understanding is that the head of the FID is a friend of the leader of the opposition.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Press freedom is a fundamental pillar on which democracy is based, and I and my party fully support press freedom. The Prime Minister said something which was untrue when he said that only our side objected to some journalists. Their side also objected. In fact, we objected to 3, they objected to 4 journalists, and the matter was eventually resolved, and here we are. And the truth is that some journalists in the country are not as independent as others, are not as professional as others, and it is quite legitimate to criticize persons who you don't feel are living up to the standards of their profession. But we would never do anything to threaten or undermine press freedom, or indeed to make any journalist feel unsafe. And if it ever happens, we'll take out whatever it needs to stop it happening.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Our next question is from Dionne Jackson Miller, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, Causal Barnett is a blind Jamaican who is also a very experienced and very qualified teacher, but who was out of a job for 4 years. Now, your manifesto promises to protect the right of persons with disabilities. Those Jamaicans are disproportionately affected by poverty. Vision 2030 says that governments haven't been living up to a reserve a percentage of public sector jobs for persons with disabilities. That would have helped people like Mr. Barnett and others like him. Would a PNP government implement such a recommendation?
Thank you for that question, Dionne. I come from a family that has delivered transformational national service to the country, in particular in the area of persons with disabilities. My father was the first orthopedic surgeon in Jamaica, and he established what was then the Polio Center, became the Mona Rehabilitation Center. And when he died in 1996, it was named after him. It's now called the Sir John Golding Rehab Center. He also established the Hope Valley Experimental School, a school for integrated education for able-bodied and children with disabilities. 2 parliamentarians went to that school, and he established the National Road Safety Council, because of his awareness of the fact that many people who end up with disabilities is as a result of road traffic accidents. I am and we are very committed to implementing the UN Convention for the Persons with Disabilities, which Jamaica was the first country in the hemisphere to sign. And we are the ones who passed the Disabilities Act, brought it to Parliament. This government took 7 years to bring it into effect. We're glad it's in effect, but it needs to be actualized now in practice so that persons with disabilities feel and see the benefits of it. We are fully committed to that, and we are going to establish a National Disabilities Fund to aid persons with disabilities so that they can have their assistive aids, they can get help to establish themselves in business at home and improve sidewalks for their transportation. We are committed to the community of persons with disabilities.
Dr. Holness has the opportunity to respond.
To be clear, one of the things that I'm very proud of is that my administration has reserved under special orders through the NHT houses for persons with disability. They have a direct access. Under the new social housing program, we make it a point of duty to support persons with disabilities, and many persons with disabilities have benefited. Our administration have brought into effect the Disabilities Act. We continue to support the disabled community with grants and an increase in PATH benefits. Our government is committed to supporting persons with disability in Jamaica.
Dionne Jackson Miller has indicated that she would like to take her second follow-up question.
Yes, Mr. Golding, we hear the broad statements of policy and principle, but what persons with disabilities want are jobs, which is why I'm asking specifically if your administration would implement a recommendation to reserve a certain percentage of public sector jobs for persons with disabilities.
Yes, we have committed to that. Across MD&As, ministries, departments and agencies, that we would like to see quotas or an allocation for the disability community to have the benefit of employment opportunities in the public sector. But we also recognize the need to ensure that those who have the capacity to deliver services or to make things at home are empowered to do so. And that's why we have the National Disabilities Fund, which we will establish to help them to get a start in life in the area of business and fulfill their talents and monetize their talents so they can uplift themselves and their families from their homes. So yes, we're fully on board with the idea that you mentioned, Dionne.
Dr. Holness, to rebut?
Most definitely. We will do that, and we will do more. In fact, at the Office of the Prime Minister, we do make it a point of duty to ensure that persons with disabilities are employed at the Office of the Prime Minister, and we will give that directive, if it is not already in effect, to all the ministries. But more than that, people with disabilities want to be independent, and they want to work independently, many of them. And we, through various initiatives, including through the various development funds that we have, will provide resources to persons with disability so that they can start their own businesses. And I think that is really the critical thing, to ensure that our persons with disability are independently earning income.
Our next question still goes to Dr. Holness, and it comes from Giovanni Dennis.
Dr. Holness, communities like Charlemont, Birdsucker, Acadia, and many others across the corporate area have complained and have taken the government to court for inadequately regulated developments. Justice Hart Hines, in a 2021 ruling, said the KSAMC and NEPA have been dilatory in their mandate to enforce local planning laws and regulations. In December 2021, he said work was being done to restructure the entire approval process. Yet the issues persist. Why isn't more being done to force the KSAMC and the NEPA to do their jobs to enforce the building regulations?
When that comment was made, the situation was as you have said. Since then, there have been significant improvement in enforcement, and including a new planning order for Kingston and St. Andrew, which clarifies many of the issues that were in contention, including we have included more inspection officers at the KSAMC, and there are more cases now being brought to court which are being prosecuted. So there has been an improvement. However, I believe that there is still much more work to be done in terms of increasing the enforcement capabilities. And yes, there are some legislative changes that need to be clarified, particularly as to how titles are issued and how densities are approved.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Since the People's National Party assumed the leadership in the council of the KSAMC, the new Mayor Andrew Swaby has been pursuing internal governance reform, including persons from outside, to try and improve standards and processes, make them more transparent and effective, so that the citizens of the corporate area can expect higher levels of governance. I think it's unfortunate that in the case of Mr. Holness and his wife, they are in the business of real estate development, or certainly she is, and that presents serious conflicts of interest which have manifested themselves in some of their own schemes that they have developed. I think we need to have rules which preclude that kind of activity so that there's no question of conflicts of interest.
We've come to the point in the debate when the debaters get an opportunity to ask each other questions. We begin. We invite Mr. Golding to ask a question of Dr. Andrew Holness.
Mr. Holness, the Integrity Commission, in their court filing in the case that you brought to try and strike down the act and eliminate the offence for which you are being investigated, have said that you had money in the Ponzi scheme Olint and you got it out, while others suffered losses. You had money in Cash Plus, another Ponzi scheme where people lost lots of money, you got it out. And of course, you had money in SSL, and you were able to withdraw your money before it collapsed. In fact, I would say the only person that Usain Bolt has not been able to catch up with is you. And I want to ask you, how do you think and why do you think the people of Jamaica should trust you to be in charge of the governance of the country for a third term with that track record and with that cloud hanging over your head?
The leader of the opposition is a liar and cannot be trusted. I lost money in Cash Plus and Olint. However, the PNP accepted and received $1 million from Olint. He has no credibility to talk about Ponzi scheme. They benefited from the Ponzi scheme to fund their election campaign. He questions my wife's integrity about development. My wife and my family are hard-working Jamaicans. We started off with the taxes like many other Jamaicans, and I have worked hard. He has sought to weaponize that. But the people who receive me when I go into the country, they say, Andrew, don't worry. No weapon formed against you shall prosper.
Mr. Golding, your rebuttal.
I made the point that for the Prime Minister and his wife to be in the real estate business when so many of the agencies of government which regulate that business fall under his ministry, of economic development and job creation creates the possibilities for conflicts of interest, and I stick by that position.
We now invite Dr. Andrew Holness to ask a question of Mr. Mark Golding.
The leader of the opposition speaks about integrity and trust. He was an advisor to a former Minister of Finance that put in place a policy of high interest rate, for which he acted as a broker for the government to invest loans and bonds for which he received a commission of high interest rate, to the point where one of his members described this as the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. He, the Toponaris lawyer, has made billions of this, yet he does not disclose this in his integrity report. In fact, he doesn't even have a house in Jamaica. How can we believe you? And do you have assets in overseas companies for which you have not disclosed?
I've disclosed all my assets, and that's why my Integrity Commission declarations are certified. Your allegations are scurrilous and false. You made reference to DB&G, although you didn't call the name. DB&G was established in 1992 as an investment firm by 3 young Jamaican entrepreneurs. When the financial sector meltdown occurred some years later, and FinSAC was established as a response to try and protect the savers of this country so they didn't lose their money in their deposits in the banking system and their pensions and so on, DB&G, like other financial firms at the time, had to navigate that carefully to survive. We eventually were approached by a leading international bank, Scotiabank, who did a thorough due diligence on the company. It's a listed company. We were a listed company from inception. Our audited financial statements are public. Our quarterly financial statements are public. They looked at us inside out and upside down, found nothing, absolutely nothing untoward, and they bought the company. And we have nothing to hide on when it comes to DB&G. I would say, why is your government, having spent $200 million on this Commission of Inquiry into FinSAC, hiding the FinSAC report? Is it because you and your wife bought a house from somebody who had been FinSAC'd? You're a hypocrite, Andrew Holness, to be accusing me of anything in relation to FinSAC when you have been a direct beneficiary of the losses of somebody who was FinSAC, who lost their home because of FinSAC.
Again, you go to attacking my wife when you, according to the Contractor General's report, benefited from a sweetheart deal that was irregular. You benefited off the backs of the Jamaican people in creating your wealth. You were a connected party with the then Minister of Finance, and you advised and created the FinSAC debacle with high interest rate. You benefited from FinSAC. I did not purchase a FinSAC house. I bought a house on the open market. And again, you come with weaponized lies. Your lies will not work.
We now go to closing statements. Now, based on the earlier coin toss, Mr. Mark Golding of the PNP will go first.
The general election next week, Wednesday, presents a historic opportunity for the people of Jamaica. After 13.5 years of belt-tightening and austerity, we are finally in a situation where the debt-to-GDP ratio has achieved, or is on the cusp of achieving, the 60%, which was written into the fiscal rules by Portia Simpson Miller. That means that the fiscal rules and prudent economic management can change gear and look at how we can grow the economy and build a society with a better quality of life for all. We see some serious issues that need to be addressed. 700,000 Jamaicans or thereabouts live on public land, lands where they've built their homes, but they don't have titles. The colonial era law set the period as 60 years of occupation before they can get ownership. We are going to reduce that to 25 years. We're going to give them titles. And that is going to unlock over $1 trillion of wealth, which is now sealed up and quarantined in the old colonial era law that is still on the books. That is why also we're increasing the threshold to 3.5 million. So working families who are struggling to make ends meet can get a little break so they can live a better life. It's why we're going to be removing the tax from the overtime pay of workers earning up to $6 million so they can make it easier in life as well. And when I govern the country as Prime Minister to serve you, I will ensure that accountability and transparency are at the center of what we do, and any hanky-panky, any violation of the public trust will be met with the full force of the law with no protection from me. And that is a huge difference between the government I will lead and the government of Andrew Holness. That is why I'm asking you, on Election Day, next Wednesday, vote for the People's National Party, put your ex beside the head, time come for a better life.
We now invite Dr. Andrew Holness of the JLP to go ahead with your closing statement.
The administration that I lead on your behalf has cut the debt in half. We have created 280,000 new jobs, brought in 85,000 persons into the labour force. We have tripled the minimum wage. We have cut murders by 55% over the last 3 years. You have had no new taxes to worry about. This administration has taken on the previously thought of impossible to solve problems, and we have solved them. We are an administration of performance. In our next term, our pensioners who have worked so hard will get a break. Those earning $6 million or below will pay no income tax. We will give a new income tax rate, which will be graduated, which will see everyone paying lower taxes. You will see 60,000 more houses being brought on the market, with 15% of them dedicated to young people. We will give incentives to developers to build houses for young people. You will see a new transportation system for rural school children coming into being. You will see more work being done on reducing electricity. Our government is a government of performance. This election is about a clear choice: promise or performance. That's what it is. You have to make a decision. Who can deliver? It is this administration that has taken on the difficult problems, and we have delivered for you. I ask you on Election Day to vote for what is best for Jamaica. Vote for a government that performs. Vote for the Jamaica Labour Party.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Holness. Thank you, Mr. Golding. In the good spirit of the debates, we now invite Dr. Holness and Mr. Golding to shake hands. And now we can breathe. That concludes the leadership debate between party leader Dr. Andrew Holness, representing the Jamaica Labour Party, and party leader Mr. Mark Golding, representing the People's National Party. Our sincere thanks to both party leaders and all the debaters. This was the final debate in the 2025 General Election Debate Series. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to our studio audience, our production crew, production and funding partners, and most of all, our viewers and listeners all across Jamaica and the diaspora. I am Archibald Gordon. Good night.
Welcome to the post-debate analysis show, the TVJ special. Very, very good to have you. I'm Emily Shields, and back with us for the post-debate analysis, we have Dionne Quarry, attorney at law, broadcast journalist. We have Jermaine Barrett, president of the Jamaican, make sure I get that right, Association for Debating and Empowerment, JADE. We have Granville Knight, social and political commentator. And we will have on electronic platform Dr. Jermaine McAlpin, political scientist. Whoa! Where are we now? Who wants to start first? What do you make of the last hour and a half, Mr. Barrett?
Wow, I'm without words. was incredible.
Yes.
To see both leaders really going hard to prove their case to the country, I think that every Jamaican who took the time to watch this debate would have been impressed. I've been watching these debates for a number of years now. This is the best one I've witnessed. I saw passion, I saw energy, I saw a desperate attempt to wrestle facts in their favors respectively. I think it was all round an excellent showcase.
Right. Jodianne?
I thought it was an impressive showing. It wasn't a team debate, so you didn't have the ability to play off other people, to pass on questions. You had two men who had to explain their positions to the country, explain some of the more problematic parts of their story to the nation, marshal those facts in this conversation, rebut, and go back to tearing apart something that has been said. They both sounded like people who want to lead our country, and they came, both of them, with a level of preparation that, even though we were anticipating it, showcased it was a pleasure.
Right. Tell me your thoughts then.
From German, say him can see. That was a great debate. You know that was a great debate. But there are some things I really loved about tonight, and I just want to mention these 4 things. First of all, we talk about, we had mentioned how would they dress, and tonight both men dressed phenomenally well. I must give them comments to that, so that is good. The second thing I really loved about tonight, the journalists were phenomenal. They were on point with the questions, and they did not let them escape. With them feasted and they get to it, then bring back the question in a different way and more pointed and direct. Good. The next thing is that the spirit of debate was really good tonight. As a seasoned debater, I saw debating in action, and I wish all parliamentarians would actually learn how to debate. I'm really glad that now at the national youth level, debating is being considered. Another thing that in terms of what social media was upset about, were the interpreters tonight. And I said interpreters because there were more than one sign language interpreters tonight for the disabled community. And I just want to say kudos to the producers who added that touch to it. But tonight, both gentlemen, phenomenal.
Dr. McAlpin, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your thoughts on what you saw and heard?
I was certainly very impressed with the composure, the poise. Feathers were barely ruffled. It wasn't a shouting match. We were going to have an argument, a debate concerning the facts and concerning why either of them should lead the country. I am very appreciative of the fact that both of them remained composed and they stuck to their script, sometimes to the fault of not answering the question, but they both stuck to their script, and it was a respectable debate. I would say, if I were to compare it with debates on this side of the pond, certainly that debate was far more respectful in terms of for leadership of a country.
You think feathers were barely ruffled?
Well, the responses didn't result in shouting. There was grandstanding and, of course, pointing. We are Jamaicans. We love point fingers, right?
Yes.
A lot of finger pointing, but I thought it was still composed and respectable.
Let me go over to Jamelia Maitland. She has some responses from our friends on social media. You send your responses to hashtag TVJ Debates 2025, also responses from Facebook. Let's see what we have there, Jamelia. All right, she will come on in just a moment. So let's just go and queue up for those who've missed it. One of the first in the opening, the question from social media on the corrupt practices. That one went to Andrew Holness and his response, and then Mark Golding's rebuttal, bringing in a matter that has been discussed quite heavily, this issue of 28 bank accounts. Let's go to that question and answer.
In this instance, the question, you have 90 seconds to answer, and we begin with Dr. Holness.
Corruption is a serious problem in our country, and corruption requires strong leadership. From my position as Prime Minister, I have taken action against any member of my political party that has been involved or accused of anything that suggests corruption. In my own case, I have been investigated for a year with an expert forensic auditor. The findings of that report have suggested no corruption. There have been no charges. Every aspect of my report, every aspect of my personal life and my personal financial details are in the public domain. I am the politician about which Jamaica knows the most. And therefore, I am the politician who can stand with the greatest moral authority to treat with any matter that is considered corrupt, as I have done in the past. And I want to give this assurance to the Jamaican people that you know me, you know about me, you can trust me, and you know that I stand against corruption.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond to that social media question as well.
Andrew, what they know about you is that you have 28 bank accounts, that you received several $1 million in cash deposits from anonymous donors in your bank account, that your companies had transactions of over $400 million, several thousand transactions between them, and that positive side, the Prime Minister. So the whole question that has been asked is an excellent question. And we really need to step up our vigilance against corrupt behavior, nepotism and cronyism. The volume of scandals under this Jamaica Labour Party government is unprecedented. Over the number of ministers who have had to be removed from frontline duty, many of them parked in the naughty corner in OPM rather than being sacked. It is a disgrace to the country, and your personal situation where you're operating under a deep cloud because your Integrity Commission declarations are not certified also is something which Jamaica cannot go forward with.
That was part of the first salvo. Tell me about that particular moment, Jermaine Barrett, the commencement of the rebuttal by Mark Golding.
So I think Mark Golding raises some very, very important concerns having to do with the Prime Minister. There is a deadlock, yes? Jamaicans are being pulled to and fro. I think what would help us to resolve the deadlock, for example, is if the Integrity Commission would come out and reveal the independent audit report that they would have gotten, that the Prime Minister alleges sort of revealed that there's nothing to see here.
In the face of the court challenge, remember, there's a court case going on, you know, and it has been disclosed.
Right. But I'm still curious to understand why was that not revealed to begin with? It's taxpayers' money that paid for it. The people of Jamaica have an obligation, a responsibility rather, to see the full evidence. And so I'm troubled by the fact that this matter has been allowed to extend as long as it has. People are just sick and tired of the allegations and counter-allegations. I think it needs to be settled quickly.
Yes, Jodianne, on that point.
I thought that it was two people who were giving half an answer to that social media question. The question was about low voter turnout, people refusing to vote because they believe that both parties are corrupt. You answer half the question. So they've both zoomed in and focused on the corruption point with as we had spoken about earlier, Mark Golding using this as an opportunity to hammer in now some of the stories that have made their way around, seeking to harm Andrew Holness in this debate. He later on comes back in the debate and speaks about those 28 bank accounts. But the presence in that moment of Mark Golding speaking about them certainly then doesn't allow for Andrew Holness, because he's the person that went first, to go back and immediately rebut, which leaves for many people Mark Golding having left something on the table for persons to go, the parked in the naughty corner comment with persons not being removed from government, but instead put in the office of the Prime Minister is a serious thing that the Prime Minister hadn't responded to and hadn't moved back on. And we saw then an opposition leader being able to throw bombshells and not have any response back in ways that damage the Prime Minister.
But in terms of the naughty corner, is that actually true? Are there ministers parked there without...
So the idea is it is not fact. It is the appearance of fact enough to damage your opponent.
Unanswered.
And so because the Prime Minister does not at any point in time in this debate touch that, but he does go back to the 28 bank accounts, he leaves something on the table then unanswered.
Yes. Let me hear your thoughts on this, Granville.
Yeah, and I think, looking at the entire debate, this is what, for me, was one of the deciding questions that will help to determine who the winner of the debate will be, because there are so many unanswered questions here. Especially when it comes down to the point of rebuttal. Rebuttals are very important. Let me just say this. In terms of throat, in terms of structure and delivery and tone, they were evenly matched. So for me, the debate came down to the content and the rebuttals, right? And in this matter, the outgoing Prime Minister, and Holness, he failed to rebut most of the accusations brought on by his opposition. He addressed the 20 bank accounts, good.
Later on.
Yes, later on. But he did not address the $400 million in donation. He did not address the other things that were brought up. And in a debate, you can't allow issues like those to be unresolved. You're literally giving your opponent the points and say, all right, that is wrong, but that may be true.
Right. Dr. McAlpin.
It's not a debate driven by a moot. So let us be clear. It's driven by the questions asked. And of the 18 questions, the leader of the opposition brings in corruption in about 10 of his responses. So the hammering home of corruption, I think at this point in the cycle, is not going to be of that significant consequence. I wanted him to talk about his vision for Jamaica. And the hammering almost to make himself saint-like on the perspective of corruption, because he also didn't answer quite a few of the allegations concerning bank accounts or assets that he holds. And I think both of them waffled because the matter of corruption is a problem on both sides.
Right.
Certainly the JLP is on the back foot, so they have to respond more. But I think in many ways the deciding factor both for the debate and both for the elections is not going to be the question of corruption or non-corruption.
Well,
it's a question of who persons feel can run the country better.
But this is the first segment of the debate, though, Dr. McAlpin, and a social media question came about corrupt parties. This is a social media question.
Yes.
And in fact, how the Prime Minister interpreted it, that it's not only about his administration, but what he did was to skillfully put himself to say, in my own case, because he knows that there are questions about corruption over him. So how can you make the point that it is perhaps not a big issue when it is a big question in the first segment of the debate, and he spoke of his administration and interposed himself in the answer when he came back? I think Granville wants to take that, and then I'll come back to you.
No, but the question was directed to me.
All right, sorry, go right ahead. Sorry, go right ahead. You'll come after.
Yes, so certainly I think it is important. I'm saying that is not the basis on which the election will be decided. I think we have elevated corruption to being far more consequential when, as a society, we have been permissive with corruption. And in most instances, we like to talk about unilateral corruption, about corrupt politicians, but in many ways, we are not assessing that even when we talk about the transparent international rankings, it's a perception of corruption. And so I think we are far overplaying this item of corruption. That's my perspective.
Let me hear Granville Knight.
Okay, so I'm not saying that corruption is the issue or the determining factor in this debate. I'm saying that this question that was asked was a deciding factor in this debate. And let me explain. When asked a question as to pretty much why there's no vote, yes, they did not address the voting question, but Sir Holness made a lot of I statements. I have it here, a lot of I statements. While in Mark's response and answering the question, he said, one, we have made legislation, we have signed code of conduct which the opposition have not signed. So it's we have an intent to publicize our commission reports in the future. So what we're looking for the answer for this debate question is, what are the policy proposals? What will make people want to vote? And that is why I said that this for me was one of those questions in this debate, not a matter of corruption, do not twist my words, is a determining factor in this debate tonight, not the election.
Let me take a break. Stay with us. It's the post-debate analysis, more to come. Thank you so much for staying with us for this TVJ special. It's a TVJ's post-debate analysis of the leadership debate. I'm Emily Shields. I go over to Jamelia Maitland, who has some responses from the representatives, the individuals on social media. Jamelia, tell me what you have.
Thank you so much, Emily. So we have been asking our friends on Facebook, Instagram, and X about their reactions from tonight's leadership debate, and we are going to be showing some of those feedback responses now. So we have Rosemary Croft. She says, I want to know, based on Mr. Golding's tax reform, where will the country get the money to carry out all the plans he has proposed? He's not as transparent. Some other tax is behind this. Well, we're going to continue. Tani says, in my opinion, nobody won. It was a very distasteful tracing match and blame game. No proper policy or plan put on the table. Can we take a couple more? Whipping out the birth certificate was a good response from Golding. We saw that coming up a lot in the chat. The questions were good tonight, but who is fact-checking the responses? Now, from all three debates, we saw this response coming up consistently. And I know fact-checking is something that, as much as we want to do it on the night of the event, it's just time, and we do it from time to time after these leadership races happen. So in primetime news, and I know in our subsequent news reports, we're going to be sharing and we're going to be checking, verifying what the leaders and even the debaters from previous debates, what they have been saying and how truthful and accurate it is.
Thank you so much, Damelia. All right, on that matter of the old birth certificate, let us cue up that. It came from a question concerning fixed date for election. It then ended with a question from Mr. Holness, are you truly a Jamaican? And then a move on. And then in a response from Mr. Golding, the pulling out of this thing from the breast pocket. Let's cue that up.
First of all, I think the Prime Minister repeated innuendo or direct attack which has been leveled by his party on my nationality. And, you know, I just wanted to just make it absolutely clear that I am indeed born here as a Jamaican. Here is my birth certificate, and it shows I was born at the University Hospital on July 19th, 1965, and it's right here. I hope your camera can pick it up. And I have a copy for you, Prime Minister, right here. And I wish you could provide me with a copy of your certification, but of course you can't do so. Now, on the question of tax, there's a third schedule to the GCT Act now, which has a long list of items which are not subject to GCT that are exempt. We feel that laptops and other devices are critical tools of trade, and it is wrong to tax them, and we are going to add them to that list. And similarly, sports equipment, which is vital for social cohesion. Sports is a critical part of keeping young people away from straying down the wrong path and so on. Why are we taxing those items? That cost of living is already high. So I don't agree. The system we have already caters for items which should not be taxed. And we're simply saying we want to adjust those items to include things that should be there but are not yet there.
Dr. Holness?
The Jamaica Labour Party is the only political organization to have reduced taxes. We reduced the GCT from 16.5% to 15%. And we have done so in a way that has not compromised our revenues or the sustainability of future programs. All, and I repeat, all the tax suggestions and promises of the opposition will compromise our fiscal arrangements and place us back in debt or result in increased taxes. The best way to provide social services is to identify the persons who need it.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is...
Right, so on the night of the 28th of August 2025, that birth certificate moment. Jermaine Barrett, did you see it? What do you make?
I did in my mind's eye.
What did you make of it?
Listen, I think that the both camps, both factions of the political parties are locked in terms of whether or not they believe it's a big issue, is an issue that benefits them or is against the opposing team. I think this debate and this issue ought to be viewed from the vantage point of the impact that it's had on the undecided voter. I don't think that the response here sways anybody, really. I don't think that there's any Jamaican out there, really, who believe that Mark Golding is not a Jamaican. And it is, quite frankly, an accident of birth that gave him British citizenship. You know, there's a conversation about when he went and actively went for his Jamaican passport and so forth. But I think the Prime Minister was wrong. in declaring that, you know, to be a Jamaican means this, and, you know, it sort of obliges you, it seemed to me, to getting a Jamaican passport. I don't think that those issues are at all relevant. So my assessment is this does not in any way help us to arrive at a decision as to which party to support, quite frankly.
I disagree.
No, okay, good. I love
this is political theater. Yes, Mark Golding has not answered definitively the question of his Jamaican citizenship in a way that we have seen, except tonight, pulling out a document out of his breast pocket of his three-piece suit to show that he is a Jamaican citizen and was born at University Hospital. This is a clinching moment because this question of whether or not he's Jamaican now gets put to rest definitively. It is also theater and drama in that he's speaking to his base. He's speaking to the people who now see him as their leader, saying, that's my leader. That will be going viral in communities that support him, and that also will then deal with and dismiss this question of whether or not he's Jamaican.
But
later
they're already
on,
convinced.
But,
they're already convinced.
Perhaps, but later on, Prime Minister Holness does say something in another question that says, it is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. Right.
Let's take that, and then I'll come back to Granville Knight and to Dr. McAlpin, because I ask you all before the debate whether this should be a question. It had to be a question because it goes to credibility and perhaps authenticity. Yeah, it has come up. It came up in an interesting way, and the response has also been quite unique. Let's go to the follow-up question from Giovanni, which spoke to the days to confirm and weeks to renounce the British citizenship, and the response that Jodian spoke about.
I didn't hesitate to acknowledge dual citizenship. I was born in Jamaica. I had a British father, and I inherited British citizenship by descent from him. And that's lawful under the laws of Jamaica, and indeed parliamentarians in Jamaica are permitted to be dual nationals. I therefore didn't consider it to be something which was problematic. However, when it was raised last year and politicized, I decided I want to know what the Jamaican people felt about it, because I thought really my response ought to be driven by them. We did an internal poll. It showed that a majority thought I should renounce, and so I did. And I renounced my British citizenship in August last year.
Dr. Holness, rebuttal.
You know, this is a strange one. A man who wants to represent his country must choose his country. He doesn't need to ask anyone. You should choose, and that's why we say we choose Jamaica. It is indeed of concern that it was not until your 40s, when you were becoming a minister of government, that you sought to have a Jamaican passport. It is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. It is the choices you make for your country, including supporting a process that would make a Jamaican head of state here, including getting a Jamaican passport.
Part of the debate that went on a moment ago. Granville Knight, that moment, the moment from the pullout of the small paper, the birth certificate. Did you have one of those birth certificates?
The age paper.
The age paper.
I mean, are you saying my age is showing?
No.
But I think that was brilliant.
Yes.
Because, I mean, Jermaine couldn't see, so I said, like, Jermaine, he pulled out his birth paper. And not one of the current ones from the RGD, but one of the older ones. I said, no, it's one of the older ones. Yeah. And for me, that was such a great comedic relief.
Yes.
We did not see that level of comedic relief, not even in the Teens debate on the economy. And we did not anticipate it here. So for me, as a Jamaican, not necessarily as a debater, as a Jamaican, I love that antics.
Yes.
And I found that to be so cool. But what he also did, because we're missing the point that he made, he's saying that I can certify that I am Jamaican, but can you show me that you are certified in based upon your position? And that is the matter. And you know, we may be saying that it doesn't matter, or it's probably distasteful that he pulled it out. But what if, and we ask the question, what if Mr. Holness had pulled out his certification tonight in like manner?
He can't do it.
But no, I'm just saying.
Because we know he's not certified.
All right, but what if he had done? We would have said that, oh, see there? So now we're realizing that, you know, people are just being partisan where that is concerned. But there is an issue that I took, which I believe was one of the weakest rebuttal in this debate. The question is, you're not Jamaican by birth. And I didn't hear this question in sense of Mark Golding, asked me, so if I'm not Jamaican by birth, then what am I? And I think that was a very weak question.
No. What I understand him to be saying, Mr. Golding said, I got my citizenship by descent from a British father. When the matter was raised last year concerning my citizenship, I felt I needed to hear what the Jamaican people had to say, so I consulted.
And I had a problem with that response.
No, hold on. So before you have the problem. So this is why Mr. Holness is saying you don't consult when you want to lead. You should make a personal decision to choose Jamaica. That's what I heard him say. So it's not, he's saying whether you're born here or not and you can flip out the birth certificate. When the time came for you, Mark Golding, to decide, you threw it out to the people to consult without choosing. Now, you can say what you make of that, but that's how I understand the Choose Jamaica thing to have come in. And I soon come to you, Jody.
Yeah, man, I get that, but once again, the question was asked. And you have to remember, we are looking, as Jody said earlier, we are looking for sound bites.
Yes.
And if that becomes a soundbite tomorrow, you're not Jamaican by birth. And instantly the question asks, what are people in the diaspora thinking? That kind of situation. What choices did you make? You chose to leave.
Yes.
Which means although you're born here, so those are some questions that are coming out from this.
Yes. We'll come back to your other thought. Yes, let me hear it, Jody, because you disagreed with him saying that.
I disagreed. It's not your birth that makes you Jamaican. I thought that placing it on the table like that did a disservice to what he was saying. So I didn't understand it the way that you did, which was that Mark Golding didn't choose Jamaicanness, but rather that it is not your birth that makes you Jamaican is something now that goes to the heart of Jamaicanness. With a constitution that says you can be born here, you can be by virtue of second and third if you apply for Jamaican citizenship, be Jamaican. For somebody who is born in a hospital, now pulled out the document and said so. What more is your question on Mark Golding on this? And I thought it didn't work very well. I thought Mark Golding's response, though, on this, that he had to poll to see people's reaction and response to his Jamaicanness was also an issue. So I did not see them connected as responses. I saw them as two problematic responses, and I gave them both weak marks for that.
No, all right, let me hear you, Dr. McAlpin, before we go to the break. Dr. McAlpin, can you hear us on the birth certificate moment and the...
Yes, I can. I thought it was a nice masterstroke for the leader of the opposition to pull out his birth certificate. But like Jody, I feel like the question of the birth certificate and the right to lead, for me, it's indicative of another issue, and that is the choice, right? When he said he did an internal poll, I was very uncomfortable with that. Why you'd need to do a poll to determine whether or not you should get a Jamaican passport. I found that to be problematic because it is almost as if you wanted now to consult the people, though it was internally said, didn't say to the party or to his family. He said he did an internal poll, and the majority said he should renounce his citizenship. So I found that problematic.
All right, let us go to a break. When we come back, more in the post-debate analysis. Thank you, viewers. We're back with you in the TVJ special. It's a post-debate analysis, and we had a heated discussion during the break about this particular matter and some of the sentiments. Perhaps we should share with the viewers some of the issues that we were debating about this very birth certificate moment, and how is it that we read or didn't read, because it's fascinating to me that the way I said I interpret the Choose Jamaica, none of you on the panel saw it that way. And there are some people who are taking an issue with the Prime Minister saying your birth certificate alone, when you're born here, doesn't make you Jamaican. Go back to that again, Jody, and tell me some of the responses you were getting from social media to their understanding of that question.
Watching people respond and react to that, they understood it. The comment made by the Prime Minister, it's not your birth that makes you Jamaican, they sat back and said, what do you mean? Because one, constitutionally, that's not accurate. So that is, the Constitution says if you're born here, you're Jamaican. But we also allow for people at various degrees of Jamaicanness to be Jamaican. But two, the idea that Mark Golding, remember, this is after he whips out the document out of his pocket and says, I'm a Jamaican, I was born here, that he's asking him to choose Jamaica after Mark Golding in his response said he has to do a poll. He has to go out and find out what people are thinking about whether he should renounce his UK citizenship. I think what the Prime Minister does is not address this idea of him having to do polling and finding out the way the winds blow before he renounces, but instead when the Prime Minister appears to to make a bold statement that says that Jamaicanness is not just being born Jamaican, but doing more. He adds on more in a way that I thought was a little further than he might have wanted to go.
Okay. Jermaine, you have a thought on that?
Yes, I think that I'm not a defender of either gentleman. I think, though, that one has to be charitable to the Prime Minister. Responding under pressure, he misspoke. Because we've not seen any evidence at all that there's an attempt to change what being Jamaican means, right? And so I think what the Prime Minister is really saying is that to demonstrate, to attain, to strive for leadership at the highest level of the country, you must be so committed to the country of Jamaica that you would have given up another citizenship.
Without
that's
consulting.
what he's telling you. Without consulting. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, though, that misspeak on his part will be misconstrued in many domains as meaning that, well, you're questioning my nationality that is granted to me constitutionally.
Let me ask you something. This particular birth paper, I don't think I've seen anyone like this in.
We had the birth moment in the United States, recall that.
Right, but you didn't get to see that birth paper, Mr. Barrett.
No, I did not.
It's a very old one.
Yes.
Is there an issue concerning whether does the old one demonstrate authenticity, or should the newer one be the one that is used, especially if a Jamaican passport was had and you can't have it on the old one? Does that even matter? Let me hear you.
There's something interesting about that. Remember, you get to keep the old one as well as the new one. I'm sure he has a new one somewhere. Of course, he's a top minister in the country. But that was also a very strategical political move. Because the older base will say, wait, him have one old birth certificate, me supposed to have one too. So there's that part of our history where that is. I used to have that back in high school. What I used to tell you, but that's a difference. But that's my first birth certificate. So I was really surprised to see that. For me, it was, you have a birth certificate. But no, I wanted all one. Yes. And that was just a really good Jamaican moment.
Yes, Jordan.
Authenticity. It's just a marker of. They wrote on it at UE, at UC at the time it would have been. They wrote on it, this is the paper, and not only that. For all the thinking that we can do after the fact, in the moment when he went into his pocket and pulled it out, it was set game match. So there is a bit of theatre that comes out of that is not replicated by a nice, shiny, RGD glossy piece of document.
Right. And then the timing of that response as well, which it goes back to the rebuttal, because Dr. McAlpin, this birth certificate moment, it didn't even come with a question concerning nationality. It came really
tax break for small businesses and
a question for tax break.
Yes.
But it tell me about the flow of it in light of the response to the Prime Minister in the question before when he asked, are you truly Jamaican? And how Mark Golding made use of this other question on small business in the rebuttal to deal with that issue right there. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so they've been using other responses to answer previous questions. But when he pulled out that birth paper, as they'd call it, I thought that put everything to rest, right? Especially because it was the old one. It means that he's an older Jamaican. He's not a new birth certificate that he would have somehow acquired his Jamaicanness sometime recently. So I thought that was very strategic, and it was well played. It was well delivered, and if there was a drum roll, that would have been the drum roll moment. But I think the larger question is the reality that he appears to be more trustworthy having that having that birth paper than the newer one. In my perspective, I felt like he would come across to those older Jamaicans as being a man of the people.
If I may quickly.
Yes,
I think that this bit of the response must also be connected to the response about members of the disabilities community and what it is that the administration either political party would do for that. And I really think that Mark Golding was very strong in terms of pointing to his lineage, his father's contribution. So a lot of persons who are now somehow annoyed because Mark Golding's father is British and Mark Golding became British therefrom, have now to reflect on the fact that this British father of Mark Golding has done a tremendous amount of good to the country at large. I think that was a powerful connection when you twin the two.
Yes, yes. We'll pick up on that particular clip in a moment. He really did use the chance to humanize himself, to point to his immediate lineage.
And to redeem his lineage.
Right, and to say we have worked with people with disability. So when you ask about whether we're going to have jobs farmed out for people with disability, that's the family from which I come. You remember that moment, Jody?
I do remember that moment. The question, though, and one that they had to go back to was public sector jobs for people with disabilities, if they were willing to reserve jobs. He does a great job in the details of going through his father's work and going through the UN Convention on Disabilities, talking about the Disabilities Act, talking about his background as part of that.
Yes.
The answer to the question, though, is one that Dionne had to go back to. Getting public sector jobs for people with disabilities. Both he and the Prime Minister spoke about allowing for persons with disabilities to get on the PATH program. Well, not him and the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister spoke about persons getting on the PATH program. He spoke about his lineage and the background. The getting the jobs for people in the public sector part, though, is what everybody had skipped and Dionne had to go back to.
Yes.
And so I thought it was an amazing way to pull in what he needed to, but there were quite a number of instances where they weren't answering the questions they got. They answered the questions they thought benefited them.
Right, but in that moment, I think his familial connection was such an important one.
And humanizing.
And humanizing, that it was great to have deviated from the actual question and to make people forget the question and to focus on him, what his father did, what he will therefore do, and force the questioner, in this case Dionne, to actually come back to the actual question, because you took a moment. Look how it resonates with you, Jermaine. You take a moment to say,
as a member of the disability
yes, hang on a minute. This man is asked about disabilities, and he's telling us, having showed us the birth certificate, he's telling us now that my father worked here, specifically with the disabled, and there's actually a center established
even though
for
him. Even though we consider him a British citizen.
Yes, yes. So that was a...
I did not see that link initially until we are now looking at all the facts playing out.
You didn't see that link?
No, man, as it relates to just verifying that...
Yeah.
Because it will now answer the question, you know, in terms of, it's not your birth that makes you Jamaican. What can be known, what he can now say is that if my father building one of the only disability centers in this country for the Jamaican disabled community, how more Jamaican can my lineage get?
Yeah, it's a question about commitment to country.
Yes.
And he's demonstrating here that his father was committed to the country, he's committed to the country, and so by mere accident of birth, which was considered nationality by birth to me, there's no issue there.
No, I agree. But just for point of being absolutely factual, I think the issue with the Choose Jamaica that Andrew Holness came with is when he said, when the matter was raised last year, I need to know how the Jamaican people felt. And so I consulted and had to renounce, just as a point of fact, but I take all of the other points. There was a question on constitutional reform. Let us remind ourselves what that was and the responses that came following that question. Yes. Let's go to the one on constitutional reform. Let's queue
up. As a nation in reducing our public debt, we ensured that the fiscal rules were very strong, with an algorithm, an equation in the fifth schedule to the Financial Administration Audit Act that determines the fiscal balance that must be hit by each year's budget, and that has ensured that successive governments have stayed on course to take it down to 60%. We can do constitutional reform, but it requires authentic consultation with the people, and there must be an effort to have bipartisan consensus on critical issues. And we have not been able to achieve that consensus yet on the critical issue of decolonization, in particular our final court, which is now the Privy Council, the King's Court, that makes orders in the name of the King, as opposed to the regional court, which has been established, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which Jamaica helped to design, helped to fund, and which has developed over the last 20 years. a reputation for independence and excellence. There are aspects of the bills that are in Parliament now that we have big problems with. In particular, the fact that effectively it will allow the Prime Minister to appoint the President, because a simple majority of both houses will do it if we do not agree who that person is. I think that is wrong. I think that the President of the country must command the trust and confidence of both sides of the political aisle, and indeed the wider public.
Dr. Holness?
To be clear, the bills before Parliament do not give the Prime Minister the ability to appoint the President. We are the party that have advanced the greatest, the process of repatriating our sovereignty. I am a Jamaican through and through, and I want to see my country's sovereignty represented.
Part of the debate into matters concerning constitutional reform. Any biggie jumped out at you from that particular discourse there, Jermaine?
Yes, I think the Prime Minister was not being precise and accurate in his response when he says that the bills before Parliament do not give him as the Prime Minister a kind of a veto power on the appointment of the President. It does. It may not do so explicitly, but a Prime Minister who commands the largest party in Parliament, we know how our version of Westminster politics works. People fall in line with the party. People fall in line with the Prime Minister's dictate. So it gives the Prime Minister an oversized sort of influence over the process, at least that. I think as well, though, that the matter...
This is under the new constitutional reform bill?
Yes. Based on...
If there's a deadlock, if they can't decide.
Yes, precisely.
Yes. Yes, go ahead. Based on the...
Right. I'll leave my comments there for now.
Right. Jodianne, you have a thought on that?
So this was a follow-up to the follow-up to the follow-up question, because it starts off with Mark Golding talking about a 62%. That 62% is because the Prime Minister challenges him, saying that the debt to GDP ratio this year will be 60%. Prime Minister Holness says, nope, it's supposed to be about 65%. Mark Golding starts off then in the question now about fixed election dates and constitutional reform by first going back to answering the 62%, saying, nope, it has been reworked to 62%. So you're seeing this back and forth of them pulling answers to different questions along as they answer new questions. But this discussion about constitutional reform, fixed election dates, repatriation of sovereignty, these are three questions in a row that are asked that are all about where we are. So the question of fixed election dates and the tinkering with the Constitution that the Prime Minister speaks of is something then that Mark Golding responds to, saying you are tinkering when you're moving parts around with regard to the DPP, for example. The Prime Minister, though, very strongly says that he wants to see his country's sovereignty, and then he says, and it's being frustrated by this guy on the other side, talking then constantly about the things we could get if only Mark Golding and his side would get out of the way. And so I think that was a powerful set of points that he was able to set up there as he was talking about this. But this discussion about the way that we go forward is going to constantly be a political ball because both sides are unable to agree.
Right. And I think we heard for the first time from the Prime Minister that he prefers a local court.
Right. And that's the comment I was going to head to.
Yes, but that he wants a consultation on such a big issue. Tell me why it jumped out at you.
It jumped out at me because there has been a war being waged about this Privy Council matter. The opposition leader has sought hard to press the Prime Minister to declare what his administration's position is. We heard it tonight. I think, though, that there's a broad principle and philosophical divide between the two parties. The Prime Minister's stance is, well, I have a personal view, my administration may very well be locked into that view, but it's not for us or the opposition, for that matter, to decide for the Jamaican people which court is the apex court for the country. And I think it also feeds into a narrative and gives fodder to the government, where the government can now say, well, the opposition is being dictatorial and undemocratic in declaring that the Jamaican people ought not to have a say, that it ought to be a matter for the Parliament to decide. And the response from the opposition leader to say, well, constitutionally we're not required to have a referendum on this matter is besides the point, it is not illegal either for the Prime Minister, or for this matter rather, to be brought to the people of Jamaica. So the fact that the Constitution doesn't make it illegal doesn't make it illegal for it to be done that way.
Right. Your thoughts, Granville?
But then again, remember, he said that by conventional practice for other nations, the government just made a decision. They did not put it to a referendum. And so if this is so important, if this is something that you're so passionate about, and you believe that it's in the best interest of the country, and there's nothing, no law preventing you from acting on this, why? We have elected you as the Prime Minister. We trust you. Since you have the leadership power, we're going back to, remember the same thing we were talking about when Mark said that he was going to put the issue to the people. We said that it questioned his leadership ability. Why are you going to put an issue that can be easily rectified within the Parliament back to the people?
Because we're at a point where we must have a referendum on the matter of the Republic, right? So why not add that to it as well? And can't the Prime Minister have a personal view, but chooses not to use his authority as Prime Minister to force it upon the people? I think that's absolutely reasonable.
Yeah, no.
And to say finally, that no other country has done it this way does not mean, in my mind, that Jamaica can't be the first to do it this way and to be successful.
Jody, and you're saying no, then Dr. McAlpin.
You're the lawyer. Please explain.
It's not just the lawyer in me, it's also a journalist in me, because when I had raised this to Dr. Lloyd Barnett, who's a constitutional scholar, but also a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, on this proposition that Jamaica have its own final court of appeal, his words were, no serious person considers that to be an alternative. To hear the Prime Minister tonight in a conversation now,
no serious person considered what?
That to be an alternative.
What?
Jamaica having its own final court of appeal, that as a setting up its own final court. That this is a discussion between the Privy Council and the Caribbean Court of Justice and setting up Jamaica. So I had asked him that question in particular. That's not correct. No, I'm telling you his response
but that's
to me.
Not correct, because
his response to me
but from
was this.
Golding was Prime Minister. He said we need to consider
having a final court here, and this conversation about it is one that I have repeatedly raised.
Yes.
Do we have this third option of this final court? The Prime Minister puts on the table he wants a local court, respects the CCJ, but thinks that we should have a local court. The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, though, is still in place. We are now having a conversation that brings in a whole third about a whole way of how much money is it going to cost, what does it look to set up, everything. I think it expands the conversation. It's a definitive answer for the first time that we have received tonight, and I think that it is useful going forward, but it is one that I did not expect to hear.
All right. We have about a few minutes to go. Let's, Dr. McAlpin, you had anything else to say on this? There are a lot of other clips, but over the course of the next couple of days.
Yes, I was trying to say that a referendum can be consultative or binding. And so if we're going to talk about consulting the people, that's one of the mechanisms used by many democracies across the world. So I certainly think that it could have been used and should be used as an instrument if we really want to say we want to gauge what the people want. A referendum could be done. If it's not binding, can be consultative, but I think certainly that's a path that should be taken.
Right. All right. We have about 4 minutes to go. Your thoughts, Mr. Barrett. Who emerged head and shoulder or head or whatever from this debate?
I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from one side in relation to my answer, but I stand brave and bold in declaring that the Jamaica Labour Party, Andrew Holness, the leader thereof, won this debate decisively.
Yes. Granville?
I'm going to be it's on the contrary. I would say Mark won this debate, and let me tell you why. In the latter half of the debate, they were evenly matched. Mr. Holness came out a little bit slow out of the blocks, and that's why I said for me, the debate was decided from early on. I'm glad that he came on head-to-head at the end, but this debate was decided from the initial questions asked, and so I'm going to give this debate to Mark Golding.
Dr. McAlpin?
Yes, using the scorecard, I would say that the rebuttal certainly placed the Prime Minister over the line, so I give the leadership debate to the Prime Minister. I scored them at 31 and 32.5.
Jody?
It's so interesting to have a mixed panel here, because I thought, looking at some of the structure of the arguments with some of the details that were given by both sides, looking at who answered and who didn't answer questions, use of time as they were going through the questions, and the rebuttals as well. What is it that you were to take away from this debate? I thought in my scoring that I would give Mark Golding the edge, given what it is that he was able to indicate, but also that the Prime Minister in some points was incredibly strong, but in others was not as commanding, and part of that might just be the exhaustion factor that we spoke about earlier.
Well, on this, the 28th of August at 11:28, with this leadership debate, in my view, it was a very strong showing from both gentlemen. At the end of the day, I really preferred Mark Golding's presentations. And part of the reason I preferred his presentations, the ability to rebut and to recalibrate in a timely manner, and to put some crucial issues on the table that got Mr. Holness a bit flustered some points in time. He did contain himself, to his credit. I think the edge in this debate came with Mark Golding's ability to rebut, and rebut he did. I think the Prime Minister absolutely sold his record in terms of what he's been able to do for the people of Jamaica. So there's no knockout in this debate. But I did expect Mark Golding to come, having watched him through the Parliament, and I think he did exceptionally well in rebutting on some very crucial points. So for me, I definitely give the edge tonight to the Leader of the Opposition, Mark Golding. Catch us next week, when we will come to you for the counting of the numbers on election night on the 3rd September 2025. Thank you to my panelists, and have yourselves a good evening. I'm Emily Shields.